Let's talk about imposter syndrome. Basically, you're an imposter anytime you know more than what you're doing. So anytime you sense a gap between what you know you could be doing or should be doing and what you're actually doing, you feel like an imposter, right? Well, there's a fallacy that if we know, then we should be able to do. But I don't think you need researchers to tell you this, but it's been researched and proven that knowing is actually a shockingly small portion of what we do. And it's called the G.I. Joe fallacy. You can look it up on Wikipedia. That said, knowing must precede doing, right? And so if you're seeking any level of mastery or skill in your domain, you're always going to know more than what you do. So instead of beating yourself up for not doing, you should congratulate yourself for knowing more. Because honestly, the alternatives are not that great. The first alternative is not knowing as much as you know, and therefore believing that you are operating at the peak and you are the best at what you do. Now, how many of you have spent time with people like that? They're not fun, right? They're kind of delusional. Like they kind of think they're the best when they're really not. And they're just blind to, really open their eyes to see what they could know and what they could be doing more of. The second alternative is worse, which is dumbing down what you know to fit what you do, to seek that congruence. So you're actually denying knowledge. So if you're serious about your work, if you really care about your work, neither of those paths are really going to be okay with you. I'm a life coach, and so the ways I can feel like an imposter are basically infinite. Anytime I feel like I'm not living my best life or being my best self, I feel like an imposter. So when my inner critic comes up, I have two main options. One is my automatic response or my automatic reaction, which is honestly, easier because it doesn't take any effort at all. I just kind of go with my reaction, autopilot, and that sends me usually into a fight or flight kind of feeling, because my inner critic is basically attacking me. It's saying things like, who do you think you are? You suck at this. You're worthless. How can you help others when you can't even help yourself? Like, do you really know what you're doing, right? So these are attacks that I have to either defend against or run away from. And when I fight, I'm maybe pushing, resisting, I'm fighting back with my inner critic. Or when I avoid, when I'm in flight, I tend to procrastinate because I'm like, well, I don't really want to listen to my inner critic, so I don't want to engage in things that would bring that voice up. So I procrastinate. But the irony of that is that I end up actually validating my inner critic's beliefs, right? If you let things bother you, if you let judgments bother you, it means that you believe them on some level. And so if I let my inner critic send me into fight or flight, it's because I'm actually validating them, and what we resist persists. The second option takes more effort. It's more intentional. And I really want to emphasize that it really takes more energy and more time to respond in this second way. So what is that second way? Turning towards my inner critic and inviting it into a conversation. And I mean literal. Like I'll even talk to it out loud. I'll write it down in my journal. Because my inner critic is trying to protect me from pain, from shame, failure, all these things. And so it's incredibly sensitive to any threat to that. And that is a talent that I appreciate, even if I don't always need it. I don't always need to be that tuned in to all the threats around me, right? But it's useful sometimes, honestly. So my job as a leader to my inner critic is to take in what it's saying and evaluate it based on what's useful, what's not useful, and then thank it for its, service, for trying to help me. Then I make a decision based on my whole self, not just on this one part. And inevitably what happens when I do that is that my inner critic ends up feeling heard because I've let it say its piece. I've asked it for its concerns and its perspective. So it backs down, it calms down. I get to learn a thing or two about how I've stepped out of alignment with my integrity and maybe some ideas for how to step back onto the path. And I get to feel a sense of appreciation and friendship with my inner critic. And it gets to feel a sense of trust back in me. So next time you're feeling like you're being an imposter, just pause for a moment and don't let yourself go down this path of fighting your inner critic or avoiding your inner critic. Congratulate yourself for knowing more, first of all. And then see if you can learn from your inner critic. Like, what is it that it's saying to you that you could be maybe trying to do better? And then from your whole self, decide what makes sense for you to do right now. So I hope this helps. My name is Eddie, and like I said, I'm a life coach. I work with overachievers who feel burned out, either in their work or in their life. And a lot of overachievers have a really strong inner critic that they've been battling since they were kids. And so healing this relationship between you and your inner critic is such an important first step to facing a feeling of being an imposter with more wisdom and calm. So if imposter syndrome or inner critic is something that you struggle with, feel free to reach out to me. I love having conversations with people who are grappling with these issues, and I'd like to help however I can. And if this video was helpful for you, check out my other videos, my other content, blogs, sign up for my newsletter. And yeah, otherwise, thanks for watching and be well.